Welcome in. It is week 15. It's the Football Guys DFS Show. We are going to run through cash game GPP plays. We're going to primarily look at DraftKings. We're going to check in and see how Cracking FanDuel did. We're going to talk about a brand new tool that Devin has been a big part of at Football Guys, and we're very, very excited to release it. And without further ado, Devin, what is this new tool that we have available?
Yeah, we have a brand new showdown optimizer for those who enjoy the single game showdown contests. The best news about it, I think we're going to have it free through the end of the season, a regular season that is. So if you're not a Football Guys subscriber, all you have to do is put in your email and sign up for our email list. It's completely free, and we will put the link to the optimizer in the comments below. But just go around, play around with it. Build some lineups, have some fun with it. The showdown contests, even if you're not a heavy DFS player, are always a fun time just to sit down, watch a single game. And especially if you're going to a game, like if you're going to a game, you're not going to pay attention to a lot of the other games. Like just building one of those and rooting for that lineup, always a good time. So, we're really excited about it. We've spent a lot of time on it this year, trying to get it right, trying to make sure the optimization works. We've added some randomness features, which essentially add a random multiplier so that instead of getting the same lineup every single time, it can produce some different lineups as you're building those through. So, and then there's some stacking features too. So you can pick like, hey, I want 4 players on this team, 2 on this team, give me the best lineup, and it'll generate all of that for you. So really kind of a user-friendly tool. If you can't figure it out, then, so you can certainly reach out to me and I'll try and help you. But we're pretty excited about it. So go check it out. Again, comments below. If you try it out, give us a comment, give us a like, give us a subscribe, whatever YouTube things do these days. And just give us feedback, because we're going to continue to try and improve it, along with our other great tools here at Football Guys.
And that's awesome. And that's really exciting to be able to do that. I know when we were in the testing phases, I threw Josh Dobbs in as my captain, and it gave me Drake May as well. And I said, well, I don't know if this is a good optimization. And Devin said, well, nobody would actually do that, Jeff. You are an idiot. So that's, we did that in testing. But
on a total points perspective, the optimizer is working accordingly. It's just nobody's going to put a backup quarterback as their cap. It used to be a strategy because it worked like 4 times in one season. And then people quickly realized, like, over the long run, it just doesn't work.
So that's probably the strategy, the story of Jeff Bell in fantasy football. But let's go through our games of the week. Phil, how are you doing? It's great to see you. And what are you looking at this week?
Doing good. Wearing the creamsicle unis like the Bucks tonight while they're on TV as we're recording. Hoping for a big game from my guy Emeka Egbuka, so I'm going to put that out into the universe. One quick thing that I would throw in there on the Showdown Optimizer, Devin mentioned that you can tell it, I want 4 guys from Tampa Bay and I want 2 guys from Atlanta, and give me the optimized lineup. And I absolutely love that. And I think it ties in with the great content that the guys do at Football Guys too. We have write-ups for the showdowns every Monday night, Sunday night, Thursday night. And you could read those, get the strategy that the guys are putting out there, and then put into the optimizer what type of build that you want. And it'll do the rest of the work. You really don't even necessarily need the content, but I think that the content and the tool kind of go hand in hand. One multiplies the value of the other and vice versa. So good stuff. I'm very glad to finally have one of those on the site, and I think it came out great. But without further ado, let's get to what the good people came for, and that is the main slate on Sunday, where I think we've got a slate that could potentially have some fireworks. It opened up with 3 games with totals of at least 52 points. They've since come down a bit, but those 3 games are still headliners. And this is definitely for GPPs a week where heavy game stacking looks preferable to kind of seeking out isolated spike weeks because I think that you're going to need one of these games stacked or you're going to get buried. So they are the Lions at Rams with a 54.5 point total. Rams favored by 6. We're not used to seeing Detroit as a 6 point dog, so that one should be interesting. And I would welcome a healthy amount of pass attempts from the Lions. I think that could result in some fantasy goodness. And the Rams offense is the Rams offense. They're good every week. Then we've got Bills at Patriots with a total that's kind of creeping right onto 50 points. We'll see if Josh Allen could get the better of Drake May in the rematch there between MVP candidates. Then we've got Ravens at Bengals, 51.5 point over under. The Bengals are on the slate. That's always a fun time, both to play them and the team that gets to play against their defense. And the next closest one, and it doesn't quite reach the levels of those other 3 games, but Commanders at Giants is interesting because there are a lot of good value plays in that game. And this slate is so far, as of Thursday night when we're recording, pretty short on value plays. So that one's looking good. And I've got one more that's a sneakier one, but I'll save it for when we start talking about GPPs. It'll keep you guys tuning in until the 30-minute mark.
Cardinals Texans 42.5.
Do you really like that?
What?
Do you really like it?
Yeah, I do. I think that Arizona has quit. They've lost 5 in a row. They went from 3-5 to 3-10. And Jacoby, the one thing Houston's very good at is stopping the run, which is going to cause even more passes from the Arizona offense. So I do like 42.5 there in Arizona, Houston.
Houston's pass defensive EPA it's negative 0.21 per play, and next is the Rams at negative 0.11. So it's like insane, Houston's defense. But Devin deserves all the flowers because last week he proved why he is our DFS captain. He said Browns Titans, and we did our initial snicker at Browns Titans, and then it turns out to be that had you thrown Shadur Sanders and Harold Fannin and Tony Pollard into a game stack there, you could have done very, very well for yourself last week in DFS. So good job there, Devin. Let's look at our cash game plays here at quarterback. I think that for me, Jackson Dart stands out at 5,600. And Phil, is that where you are with Jackson Dart? Or are you looking at elsewhere? We haven't seen it yet with Lamar Jackson, but at 6,400 against the Bengals, that's tempting as heck too. But I think that for me, Dart stood out.
Yeah, those were the first 2 names that jumped out to me. But as I really got into building out a lineup, I actually landed on Marcus Mariota at 5,000. I'd rather play Dart. I trust the rushing more. His ceiling is higher, and the Washington matchup is even better than it is on the opposite end for Washington against the Giants. But the Giants have allowed the 5th most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. That's also been the case recently over the last 5 weeks. They've allowed 3 straight games with multiple touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks. And in Mariota's last start against Denver, of all teams, he looked about as good as Marcus Mariota can. Threw for 294 yards, 2 TDs, ran for 55 yards, which is something that's in his bag. He could run for 30 to 50 yards a game. So at 5,000 on a slate where that 600 I thought really mattered, because there's a lot of wide receivers that I want to jam in at the high end that we're going to get to. I ended up going for Mariota, but I think that Dart is very much also in play. And if there's any value that opens up, I'm going to look to get to him.
Not only last week did Devin mention the Titans Browns, Devin also threw out Tyler Shuck, and Tyler Shuck had quite a game too. Devin, do you got any value here in the cash games, or are you kind of landing in the same place?
I think there's 2 names that I don't mind. I don't mind Mariota. I think he's fine. But I think there's 2 names that I like just a little bit better. The first, if I'm going to pay up a little bit, and maybe it's more of a GPP play now that I think about it, but I think Brock Purdy at 62 is pretty interesting. We saw Shadur Sanders just cook this Tennessee defense. But I think for cash, I'm going to the game I mentioned off the top. I'm taking CJ Stroud at 5,200. I think this Arizona team is just dreadful. And Woody Marks, did he practice on Thursday?
He did.
He did. I think he was limited though, right? So I know he didn't practice on Wednesday, and Nick Chubb doesn't look like he's going to go. So, Woody Marks really hasn't been all that great as of recent weeks. So I think that Houston's path to victory this week is through the air. And if you look at Arizona over the last several weeks, it's been, 45 points to the Rams. Last week, 20 to the Bucks, 27 to the Jags, 41 to the 49ers, and 44 to the Seahawks. So they're giving up a ton of points here. I think that Houston is in a sort of a must-win situation, and this is a pretty nice home matchup for them.
Devin, that's growth for you, because I think at one point this year you said CJ Stroud was your most hated player in the NFL. So
it is. I mean, I still don't like the guy, but we're seeing the board a little clear as far as I'm trying to target. You're going to see a theme. I'm trying to target the teams that I think have quit. I think the Jets have quit. I think the Giants have quit. I think the Cardinals have quit. And those are the three teams that I really want to target.
The Raiders just called. They want a word.
Are they on this slate?
They are.
Yes. Yeah, they're playing Philly.
Yeah, but Philly is hard. Yeah. I don't ever play Philly. I never get involved there, and I probably should, but that's always a tricky one as far as for Hurts, or you're relying on a tush-push touchdown, which just I don't ever mess around with that. But yes, they have quit.
Devin does not mess around with the tush-push. Devin, what are your cash game running back plays here?
Yeah, let me switch to running backs here. It's hard.
And you're going to say Saquon Barkley after you said you don't mess with the Eagles. So
no, he's going to be popular. I
Monday night value a little bit.
I haven't done it all year, so why start now? Tyrone Tracy, 5,500 is the first name I'm looking at. Washington is another team that probably is, if they haven't quit, they're pretty darn close to it. And they are, a run defense that is really trending in the wrong direction. I think Tyrone Tracy is playing motivated, trying to have a starting, have a say in the starting role in that backfield next year. So I don't think he'll win it, but he has some points to prove. And offensively, the Giants are playing much better than defensively because Mike Kafka still has this team playing at least hard. But on the defensive side, they're an absolute mess. I would rather play Tracy than a Devin Neal at 5,300. The Devin Neal is in a good spot against Carolina, who's also their run defense has collapsed. But Devin Neal just hasn't shown us anything to believe in. Travis Etienne, 6,500. Again, targeting a defense that for the Jets that just has not looked the same since week 11 when they traded Quinnen Williams. And we've seen what Quinnen Williams has done for the Cowboys and how big of a difference he has been. So the Jets have allowed the fourth most fantasy points to opposing running backs. We saw what they did last week where Devon Achane had 92 rushing yards on 7 carries. And then Jalen Wright followed that up with 107 yards on 24 carries. Bijan Robinson had 142 and 1 the week before. So, this is a team that very much is just going down the wrong direction. And then the last name that I'll throw out there, it's a challenge between the aforementioned Woody Marks or Derrick Henry. And look, if there's ever a must-win game for Baltimore, it's kind of this week. Their playoff odds aren't great. I think they're about a 30% chance of making the playoffs. But if they lose this week, it's pretty much curtains. Henry's getting the volume. Just offensively, this is an offense that really just isn't moving the ball. If you could get up to Christian McCaffrey, like I would love to, and maybe you force it. Um, but Phil, I'll defer to you. But McCaffrey certainly is an excellent play that I wouldn't fault anybody for playing.
Yeah, the game script is San Francisco minus 12.5. So if it stays on that script, McCaffrey, fresh off a bye, certainly does favor the run. The Titans have been like surprisingly stingy against the run lately, but it probably won't matter if the 49ers are like slaughtering the Titans. But there's a little bit of doubt there with McCaffrey at 9,000, especially because of the receivers in that price range. If he doesn't have a great game on the ground and he hasn't been that efficient there this year, does he need to reach his receiving ceiling against the Titans? And the answer to that question is probably no. So I'm with you. I think I like attacking that game a little bit better via the San Francisco pass catchers and Brock Purdy. I think like a Purdy, Juwan Jennings, George Kittle stack looks pretty good this week for tournaments. When it comes to cash game running backs, though, Woody Marks was my first guy. We had mentioned that no practice for Nick Chubb on Thursday. He looks like he's going to at least get a doubtful tag, if not get ruled out tomorrow. And the way to attack that Arizona defense is on the ground. I mean, we just saw Blake Corum, Kyron Williams, and even Ronnie Rivers got in on the action. They combined for 253 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Cardinals last week. That now makes them the third best matchup for opposing running backs over the last 5 when you adjust for strength of schedule. Marks has been running well ahead of Chubb for a while now, but Chubb only played 6 snaps last week before he got hurt. That left Marks in on 90% of the snaps, which I don't know if that's something that he's like built for. He looked like he was hurting under that workload in the game. But listen, the only other running back in Houston that is Dare Ogunbunwale, and that's a pass catching specialist in a game that Houston should win by double digits. So I think Woody Marks is in a really good spot. Agree with Devin on Travis Etienne at 6,500 for more or less the same reasons. I actually don't love the $6,500 price tag on Etienne. I think he's like slightly too expensive, but
Yeah, he should be like 6K.
yeah, but again, playing well. At least 19 DraftKings points in 3 of his last 4, close enough to 16 in 5 of his last 6. I don't see a way that he hurts you in your lineup against the Jets. It seems like he's put Bajal Tutin on ice. I don't know if maybe that ankle injury that Tutin got a couple weeks ago is hurting him more
He's
than
just
he's
been
let
bad.
on.
He's averaging
Yeah,
like 2.2 yards per carry over the last 3 games. Ever since he had that
yeah,
breakout game against the Chargers, if he's hurt, it's clearly that he doesn't have the burst that he did against the Chargers.
Well, and I
yeah.
think
Only
last
2
week
snaps
too,
last week.
I think ball security is a big deal with Tootin, and they played that game in the rain going up against the Colts. And I think that once they knocked Daniel Jones out of that game, they basically said, as long as we don't turn it over and blow this game, we've got this thing in the bag. And so I think that bled into why Tootin really was not involved at all last week.
Yeah, one more name that I'll throw out there just as something to keep an eye on. As of this recording, we don't know what's happening with Josh Jacobs, but he missed practice Wednesday and Thursday. Today's report didn't sound very promising for this weekend, but you never know with Jacobs. But tough matchup for Emmanuel Wilson, but 4,400 for a guy that's going to get a big workload in what I think could be a high scoring game. I think I'd be tempted to play him and Marks, and then I could get up to a better tight end and play all the wide receivers that I want to play.
Yeah, Wilson becomes a near must play just on volume alone if Jacobs misses. And LaFleur made a weird comment like he's not going to practice. We'll see if he feels any better tomorrow or something. It didn't inspire a lot of confidence for a running back who had like 22 carries last week.
Right, because it seems like an aggravation of a previous injury, which is never a good thing, and they have playoff hopes. So, you know what I wanted to ask you guys? What do we do with Kenneth Walker?
Nothing.
Because, yeah, I guess he's going to be for GPPs, but My thought there was 5,600. I get this guy's projection wrong like every single week. It's Charlie Brown in the football. Like he looks good on the spreadsheet, and then I play him, and then he has like either 3 points or 10 points,
I mean, look at his
and
game.
all of.
His game logs. Like it hasn't been. He had a game. Like he's had 2 good games in the last 8.
I just can't see him like dudding out in this spot against this free falling Colts team.
So the last week against Atlanta was like just a can't see him. He clearly
You're right.
did it last week.
Yeah, this is why I'm asking what we do with the guy. But I'm just saying that he projects really well relative to a $5,600 price tag, and the Colts. The Colts are playing Phillip Rivers at quarterback.
Yeah, do you remember like it was either last year or 2 years ago when Zach Charbonnet was like mega chalk? He was like 60%. And I'm just like, I never rock with Seattle running backs, and I've just held that true. And I think Charbonnet did have a good game that one time, but I don't know. I think you're more often right if you just fade the entire backfield there than trying to pick and choose and trying to pick which week Kenneth Walker. It's always been a pass catching issue for me. He doesn't catch enough passes for his price.
Totally fair.
But as a GPP
Walker,
play, sure.
Walker will get his 42 yards and he'll get his 18 receiving yards and 2 catches and his 8.2 points. And then Charbonnet will get 20 yards and score a touchdown and get 8.2 points. And that's pretty much how it works out every single week. This is definitely more GPP approach on this, but if Woody Marks misses, I think British Brooks might be the interesting play over. I think Agumbawale is a little bit more of the special teams kind of guy, the emergency guy, the Brandon Bolden of the backfield that is active for special teams each week. And I think Brooks might get a chance to run the ball a little bit more if Marks were to miss, but that's pure speculation, and that's definitely not what we're going to do in cash games. Phil,
Well,
what's
with Benedict Arnold over here recommending the British?
Tell you what, Phil, I know you're excited about these wide receivers. We have hardly at all. We've been doing this for 22 minutes, and we have barely mentioned this Lions-Rams game. I would have to imagine, maybe, just maybe, wide receivers are how we're going to get into this Lions-Rams game here for cash games.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you to start with Devin because my wife just got home.
Devin, talk about wide receivers because the dog is barking.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, if you can afford one of these guys, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is incredibly low priced at 7,900. He hasn't, I don't know, he's been a little disappointing as of recent weeks, and he's probably a better GPP play than he is a cash game play. But 15 or more DraftKings points in 5 of his last 7. One of those games that he didn't do it was the game he got hurt against Green Bay, so hard to fault him there. But 7,900 just seems a little bit too cheap. And then, if you can get Puka, be my guest. I'm probably not going to get there, which is scary. But he's another guy. But like since he came back from injury, he looked awesome last week. 30, what did he have? 38, something like that, DraftKings points, 167 yards and 2 touchdowns. So is he completely fixed? I don't know. But those are the only touchdowns he scored in the last 4 games. Hasn't topped 100 yards in those 4 games. Devontae Adams is getting all the red zone looks. So I just don't know that he should be $600 more than Jamar Chase. And that's the problem, is that you're really paying a price that is reflective of last week and last week's issues. The guy I want to talk about is Michael Wilson. And 6,600 seems too cheap. 24 DraftKings points or more in 3 of his last 4 games. Clearly has established himself as the number 1 receiver in Arizona. Arizona is likely going to be losing. And with no Marvin Harrison Jr., how do we think about that? Because Derek Stingley is one of the best cover guys in the NFL. I've gone back and forth, but I think I'm going to talk myself into him at 6,600. And then looking down, I can't do it. I'm gonna go. My last guy that I'll throw out there is John Mechie, 4,300 for the Jets. I think this is his time to actually get some run. He was my favorite receiver coming out of Alabama over Jamison Williams when they both came out. The lateral quickness that this guy has, and then I think he had cancer or something out of college, so it's taken him a couple years really to come back. But you know, over the last 4 games, 13.5, 18.5, 5.7, and 7.4. Which at 4,300, like that's not going to kill you. And quarterback scares me for the Jets, but I think Mechie's fine.
So you think Brady Cook is going to start and you're going to play Mechie?
Is that official that Cook is starting?
What's their names? Fields and Taylor didn't practice today.
Yeah. I'd like it better if Taylor played, but like if Taylor played, I think Mechie's almost an auto play for me. With Cook, I'm probably not going there. Certainly have zero interest in Adonai Mitchell, even in GPPs if Cook plays. But let's put it this way, if Cook plays, give me Jaden Higgins at 4,200. He's been quietly proving himself as the number 2 receiver in Houston. 15.2, 9.5, 13.8, 11.5, and 6.4 over the last 5 games. So at 4,200, it's not going to kill you. And like I said, I like Houston's passing game.
Yeah. They've consolidated with Collins and Schultz and Higgins stepping up as that wide receiver too, like you said, and Kirk and Noel and all those players that everybody else wants to project are really taking a back seat to Higgins stepping up as that wide receiver too. So I think that that's a good call out there. I would feel a lot more comfortable going there than given the questions around the Jets quarterback situation. But I think Mechie, I think you're right there with Taylor. It's just that we don't know if it's going to be Taylor, and I don't think it is going to be, but.
Yeah, so I'll jump in with mine. I think my dog might be done for now. I like Puka Nacua. I want to jam him in. I'm not too scared that last week was just a result of Arizona. I think it's Puka Nacua. I think the Lions' pass defense is shreddable. We just saw CeeDee Lamb and Ryan Flournoy go nuts against them last week. They're injury depleted more and more each week. So I think he gets to 25 points with ease in this spot. And then I'm going to pay up at wide receiver too, at the second wide receiver spot to Jackson Smith-Njigba. He proved last week that the week 13 dud was the anomaly. Got back on track with 28 DraftKings points against the Falcons. Somehow his price came down by 400. It probably should have went up from where it was. And now he gets this Colts team where both Sauce Gardner and Tre'Davious Ward are going to be sidelined. I think it's going to be ugly for the Colts, and JSN is going to be the guy that makes it ugly for the Colts. And at the third slot, I landed on Terry McLaurin. You guys know me and my skinny stack and cash games. Got to have it. And if I'm playing Mariota, McLaurin at 5,400 obviously pairs well. He was in a tough spot last week in Minnesota. I want no part of any quarterback playing Minnesota until further notice. I mean, they're just spinning everyone around. But now he gets the Giants, and I've mentioned it plenty of times this year. They play a ton of man coverage. They play it very poorly, and McLaurin is rounding back into shape. Now his third game back, I think the potential is there for double-digit targets and a spike week and what should be a reasonable floor if he gets double-digit targets, which is the important part in cash games. The only other name that I have here was Juwan Jennings. Again, probably a little bit more for GPPs at 5,200, but I wouldn't laugh him out of a cash game lineup. I think it's a soft price. Touchdown in 4 of his last 5 games. And, given all the injuries that he's dealt with this season, I think he probably needed that bye week just as much as Ricky Pearsall, and Brock Purdy's been ignoring Ricky Pearsall, and Jennings has pretty easily been the wide receiver one there. So I think he's cash and GPP viable this week.
Do you guys know who the number one wide receiver in fantasy over the last 3 weeks has been?
Is it can't be Christian Watson?
Not Christian Watson. It's AJ Brown has been the number one wide receiver in fantasy football over the last 3 weeks. 6,800 AJ Brown going up against the Raiders. The Raiders have quit. I think that's an interesting play. Stephon Diggs, 6,000. I mean, they're coming off a bye. Like, this is the Patriots' chance to put the nail in the Bills' coffin for the AFC East. I would be floored if Stephon Diggs was not planned on, targeted heavily in this game. Christian Bedford's apparently in an air cast or something, walking around in crutches. Who knows? But we saw when Bedford was out last year against the Chiefs in the AFC title game. That's the entire reason why the Bills lost to the Chiefs in the AFC title game, because they couldn't stop at all the wide receivers with Bedford left. I think Diggs is just going to smash here going up against the Bills. So something happened in Buffalo to aggrieve Stephon Diggs to the nth degree, apparently. And so I think 6,000 there, Stephon Diggs is going to be play for me. Let's look at tight ends here, and we still have Trey McBride at least came down a little bit, but it does have a horrible matchup against Houston. But then we also have Brock Bowers, George Kittle there. Where are you guys going here on your tight ends?
Harold Fannin, 4K. It's pretty easy this week.
All right, there we go. That means we can open up the board. We can talk about GPPs. We can dive in. We can look at our quarterbacks first. We can go all over the place, all our theories, whatever we want to do. GPP play, quarterbacks. Devin, what's your GPP quarterback play?
Yeah, I think it's interesting this week. I think there's a number of different options. I kind of like, it's a guy I never really play, and the price makes it a little bit tricky, but like, if you want to stack this Detroit Rams game, I think I like Jared Goff just as much, if not more, than Matthew Stafford, because he's going to be about 3 times lower roster percentage. So I have Stafford at about 7%. I have Goff at 2%. And, 6-point underdogs for Detroit's surprising, but that could lead to a positive game script for Goff in this passing attack. So I think he's at least intriguing. Look, Lamar Jackson at 64. If there's ever a game like Lamar comes out and just balls out, this could be the week. He doesn't look right. He hasn't looked right for several weeks, but that's going to drive his roster percentage lower. And then I kind of like all of these guys in that weird price range, but less than 1% Patrick Mahomes against the Chargers I know that they don't control their own destiny, but if they lose, they're done. And it's kind of, here's your last chance for, it could be Kelsey. It could be Kelsey's last year. So, we'll see. But I think it's at least interesting to see what Mahomes can do coming off of that rough loss last week. And then if you wanted to go cheap, there's not a lot of great cheap options. I think Stroud and Mariota are going to be popular because of that. Where are the Browns at defensively? Because we just saw them give up quite a few points to Tennessee. And Caleb Williams, Cam Ward looked rough, but Cam Ward has looked rough all season. This is a team that just 2 weeks ago allowed 285 yards and a touchdown to Geno Smith. And Drake May threw for 282 and 3. So, could at home Caleb Williams at 5,300 throw for 250 to 300 yards? I think it's possible.
So the Browns' run defense has been phenomenal. Really, I think they're second or third in defensive EPA, but they went down a little bit because Tony Pollard, that game was just a shocker last week by Pollard, given what he's done and what the Browns defense have done, but their pass defense has not been very good. So I think that that's a good call out there. I don't know. We haven't talked about it yet. Weather is supposed to be pretty extreme in some of these games, like negative 10 degrees or so, something like that was what I saw today. Is that a concern at all when you're looking at maybe the pass game or anything factor at all?
For me, it's all about the wind. As long as that wind is sub 20 miles an hour, I think these guys could play in the cold.
Yeah, I mean, the on field temperatures are always a little bit warmer, even in the super hot days, because you have all the people around you, you have the heaters going, and I don't know. Unless it gets below, if it gets to -10, like there's a cutoff point at some point. But I'm looking here, NFL weather, and it looks like it's 10 degrees in Chicago at kickoff time. So only 12-mile-an-hour wind. I'm not too concerned about it.
Good deal. Anything else on quarterbacks? Phil, what do you have here on quarterbacks?
Yeah, so I told the people that I would give them my sneaky over game when we got to GPPs, and I think it's the Denver Green Bay game. So I've got Bo Nix 5,900 on my list. Um, if I'm right, and this is one of those games that goes off script for the Denver defense, and they give up a lot of points to a Green Bay offense that's been playing very well. Jordan Love is pretty locked in right now. That's usually when we see the ceiling game for Nix, and his ceiling games get pretty nutty because he could rush for scores, he could throw for 3 or 4 touchdowns. And is it an outlier if that were to happen against the Green Bay defense? Yes, it's a very good defense, but we've kind of seen these Denver games before, especially in Denver, just kind of devolve into shootouts. And it wouldn't shock me with how well Green Bay's playing if they come out and put a pretty big number on the Denver defense. So, um, Nix is going to be like 1% owned, like right there next to Bryce Young. I don't think anybody's going to touch him. He makes a lot of sense to me to go heavier than the field. Jalen Hurts, 6,800. We had talked a little bit about the Raiders team, but I mean, has there ever been a better time to play Jalen Hurts in tournaments than when he's coming off a primetime game where he face planted with 4 interceptions, to fumble and get intercepted on the same play, which was mind boggling. Um, so, yeah, with him finding new and exciting ways to lose fantasy points and Lamar Jackson at 6,400, I don't think anybody's paying up to Jalen Hurts. But it is Jalen Hurts. We mentioned the tush push that happens in games more often than not. He gets in for rushing scores. He's got AJ Brown, who Jeff mentioned is the best wide receiver in fantasy football over the last 3 weeks. Devontae Smith is a great receiver. Dallas Goedert is good, and this Las Vegas team we mentioned quit 2 months ago already. Hurts, even in what's been a really bad year by his standard, he's still got 230 plus point games on DraftKings, 2 more over 25. So I've got no issues with playing Hurts at low ownership. And that's really it. I was debating Matthew Stafford. It looks good on paper, but it's 7K is a lot for like a 25 to 30 point ceiling, and that's pretty much where he's been all year. So I don't want to say that you can't win a GPP with Stafford, but it's tough because he's doing it on efficiency, not necessarily volume, and the pass catching pieces there are all very expensive. So maybe I'll have a couple of Stafford lineups. If I was making 20 lineups, maybe he'd be in one or two.
Do we mention Trevor Lawrence at all? $5,700 Trevor Lawrence. He's been the quarterback 3 in fantasy over the last 3 weeks. He's and going up against the Jets. You talk about a team that's quit now with Brian Thomas healthy. Jacoby Myers has kind of come in and been the main receiver there. It's allowed Thomas to relax maybe a little bit. So I think Trevor Lawrence at 5,700 is a little bit interesting against the Jets. Running backs.
He's going to be the most popular quarterback of the week. So,
is he going to be that popular? Okay, then that's why he's
It's my
not
fault. I
starting.
didn't release the roster percentages before this, so you had no way of knowing that.
Running backs, Devin. What are your GPP running backs?
Yeah, running backs. Let's look. So for GPPs, I I think Jahmyr Gibbs is interesting at 8,800. The price is going to prohibit some people from playing him, but if this game does turn into a shootout, certainly you could see a lot of passing goodness from him, and even better if the game doesn't turn into a shootout, you have some leverage against Amon-Ra St. Brown and the quarterbacks and Puka, who are all going to be extremely popular. So playing him on an island, I don't hate this week. Let's see who else. Tyrone Tracy, I mentioned. I don't love him, but I think he's fine. Travis Etienne, I really like this week. An interesting name. It's 17 rush attempts last week. What do we think about Chuba Hubbard at this point? Going up against New Orleans. I know Rico Dowdle had 20 touches, but so both of these guys have had volume, but Dowdle has struggled in recent weeks. Hubbard at 4,600, I think, could be an under the radar play that he's only going to be rostered in about 6% of lineups, which, at least to me, is a guy who, if there is a switch back and they say, hey, we're going to give Hubbard one last chance, maybe they do it against New Orleans. Chris Rodriguez at 4,900. If he plays, he's questionable, but going up against the Giants, there's 2 touchdown upside at 4,900 is certainly a good price. And then the last name that I will throw out there, you could play Christian McCaffrey. I think at 9K, he's right now he's targeted to be somewhat highly rostered, but I think as we get closer to kickoff, that will start to go down and the wide receivers will start to go up.
I like Travion Henderson at 6,100. I know that Ramondre Stevenson's big plotting self was back before the Patriots bye, and he somehow had more snaps and carries than Henderson. But Henderson was still involved. It was pretty 50-50. He touched the ball 14 times, had his usual efficiency, while Stevenson ran for his usual 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I don't think Stevenson's going anywhere. He's going to be annoying, but I do know that Buffalo has allowed 51 runs of 10 plus yards this season, which trails only the Giants. And I think Henderson is like the only back on the Patriots who could run that far. So Henderson is kind of like a home run play. It's just no going in that Stevenson could really wreck your Sunday if you go too heavy. But I think he's definitely worth a look because everybody's going to be scared off due to the workload. I like James Cook on the other end of that too. New England has been one of the worst spots for running backs pretty much all year. But over the last 2 games, we've seen Chase Brown go for 19 carries, 107 yards. And then in week 13, it was Devin Singletary and Tyrone Tracy combining for 104 yards on 22 attempts. So maybe the season is starting to wear on that defensive line a little bit. Cook is really good.
Milton Williams got hurt, who was their prize free agent that they brought over from Philly in the offseason.
Okay.
So he was placed in IR, and that defense hasn't been the same since then.
Okay. Good. So that's good because I missed that, and that would be a reason for it. So case in point, it's not the same defense that it was. Cook has been awfully fumbly lately, but I think that might put the crowd off of him too because those were some high-profile fumbles near the goal line that cost the Bills. So I think we could kind of buy the ownership dip on him. I like Gibbs, like Devin said. And Ashton Ginty, 5,800, sort of like New England. Philly hasn't been a great matchup for running backs, but recently we saw Omari and Hampton look good in his return. Kamani Vidal looked okay against them on Monday night. DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monungai showed no mercy against them 2 weeks ago. And even in week 12, Javonte Williams was respectable with 87 yards on 20 carries. I I don't think Kenny Pickett is a world beater, but could he be worse for the Raiders offense than the version of Geno Smith that we've seen this year? I tend to think not. So maybe the offensive environment ticks up for the Raiders just a bit. The run defense on Philly is slouching, and Genti gets all the work as a runner and receiver out of that backfield. So I like him from a point per dollar standpoint, and I don't think he'll reach 10% rostered in GPPs. So that's all I got.
I think we are very, very due for one of these Saquon Barkley 200-yard, 3-touchdown type of a game. And I feel like the Raiders here, watching Saquon Barkley on Monday night, the explosion is very much there. I think Kevin Petula is the real reason why we've not gotten what we would expect out of Saquon Barkley. The Raiders might be a good recipe of a team that has really quit and sets up very, very well here for him. I think DeAndre Swift's a little bit interesting because the Browns have been excellent against the run. So to me, that feels like people would be off of him. But then also we saw last week what Tony Pollard did there. So maybe we've got some quit watch going on in Cleveland. We know the Bears have been excellent running the ball. So I think Swift at 5,700, I think is a little bit interesting there in GPP play.
Yeah, I don't know if it's quit or if it's Myles Garrett worried about breaking the sack record and entirely focused on that. I don't know. This whole team is a debacle. So
it sounds like a good opportunity for DeAndre Swift.
Go Bears.
Let's look at wide receivers here. GPP plays, wide receivers. What do you guys have here, Phil? What do you have for your GPP plays? I do want to start this with asking a question here because to me it feels like a pretty natural pivot. So the popularity of Puka Nacua and Amon-Ra St. Brown going to Devontae Adams and Jameson Williams feels like a pretty natural pivot there. In that is that strategy there? Is that feasible? What are your thoughts there?
I think 100% it's feasible. That's one of my favorite things to do in on slates like this, where you're looking, especially outside of game stacks, right? Where you're looking to surround a core of players with players from the game that could go off. Doing it with the secondary receivers who aren't garnering that same ownership, a lot of times that's a great way strategically to position yourself so that you could fly past the rest of the field. If you hit on your core and then the game that everybody is playing does what it's supposed to, you kind of get the best of both worlds. So I'm with you there. I think both of those guys are definitely in the mix.
What else do you have here per place?
Well, my guys, I'll give you Amon-Ra St. Brown, 7,900, just because I think that ownership is gravitating towards Nacua, JSN, and Jamar Chase. And the other guys in that top salary tier, like St. Brown, even though he's in a fantastic spot where Detroit's pass attempts and therefore his target volume should be elevated. St. Brown, Rashee Rice is the other guy up there. They're not going to get the ownership that they ought to. I had AJ Brown, and now I feel silly for not answering your trivia question before, Jeff, because I do have noted here that he's over 100 yards in 3 straight, and he's had double-digit targets in 3 out of his last 4. I think 3 touchdowns over that span, too, so that was a pretty obvious answer that I missed. I think Barkley might be a little bit overexposed to the field because he's coming off of his first good game, and everybody saw how good he looked. That's why I'd rather lean on Jalen Hurts. And if you're going to play Hurts, then you play the passing game. Hurts, Brown, Devontae Smith at 5,800 is also interesting. I don't know that I would double stack them because it's hard for both of them to go off in the same week, but like both of those. Tet McMillan, he doesn't like being called Tet. Tetaroa McMillan. Just from a pure salary versus ownership standpoint, I think that Carolina New Orleans game Bears Browns is going to be low too, but Carolina New Orleans might carry the lowest ownership on the slate. It's going to be one of those 2 games. And McMillan, I think it has settled in as a true wide receiver 1. I could see him going for something like 7 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown. And last one's Christian Watson, 5,500. Not too many guys out there capable of scoring 25 DraftKings points on 4 targets. And Watson did that last week. This Denver defense is not the Chicago defense, but again, if I'm right about points being scored in this game and Jordan Love coming in looking good, then Watson has to be the guy that makes it happen because he is the best thing that's happened to that offense since Tucker Kraft went out.
Jaden Reed, 4,600.
I
think Watson gets a lot of Patrick Surtain, and Reed out of the slot could have some opportunity at $800 cheaper. And a lot of people are going, I don't want to say a lot. There's going to be more people that play Watson than Reed.
Agreed there.
So could it work? Sure. Anyway, I'll just throw a couple names because I know we're going long. Phil mentioned most of them. I like Devontae Adams. We talked about him. Jaden Reed, I mentioned it. I like DJ Moore going up against Cleveland. Again, has this Cleveland team quit? DJ Moore, has been extremely inconsistent. But when he's good, he has 2 20-point games in 2 of his last 7. So, if he's only going to be a couple percentage rostered, it's not a bad play at 5K to have 20-point upside about 30% of the time. And then just looking through the rest of my list.
To that point on DJ Moore, Ben Johnson said following the game that he was shocked that DJ Moore only had 1 catch because he said that he would have thought DJ Moore would have been a guy that would be very involved. And then he said, we got to figure out a way to get him very involved. So
there you go. I think that's it.
I think Jacoby Myers at 5,600. I mentioned that already. He had 6 targets in 3 straight games. Went up to 10 targets last week. Wan'Dale Robinson, 5,900, going up against Washington. Washington has been a matchup to target for wide receivers. And I think 5,900 is a really good price there for him. Kind of Jack Besh at 3,200. If you really needed to figure out a way to shoehorn something into your lineup, 6 catches, 50 yards last week. That could be a lot of garbage time potentially if the Eagles figure out their offense at all. And last time, 2 weeks ago, we had Dane Hendry in here, resident Bengals fan Dane Hendry. And if T. Higgins is out, Mitchell Tinsley almost had a good game on Thanksgiving night. We saw all those targets. Maybe he lost his chance with all those targets, but at the same time, Joe Burrow likes him quite a bit. If T. Higgins is out, 3,100, Mitch Tinsley might come into play a little bit there. Tight ends. What do we have for tight ends? I think Isaiah Likely is going to be thrown out a lot with how the Bengals have been against tight ends. Seeing Mark Andrews pop up questionable, 3,400 there for Isaiah Likely. What else do you guys have at tight ends?
I mean, Fannon's going to eat up most of the roster percentage. I think he's going to end up around 30%, which I don't know that I would fade him, but it's certainly a difficult price point. I think George Kittle is interesting. We haven't seen that boom game from him. 5,400. We know he has upside. He does have 2 20-point games this season, but I just think there's more to be had from Kittle, who continues to impress. And then, I don't know. Going back to the Mahomes thing, like, is this just one last stand for Kansas City where they have to have it and they put a good performance on? And 4,900 for Travis Kelce. I understand I know he had a bad game last week, but 12 or more DraftKings points in 4 of his last 6 at 4,900 is a pretty good price.
Damn, had the same 2 names, but I will say that George Kittle at 5,400, that is a silly wrong price by DraftKings there. Since Brock Purdy came back, only 15 wide receivers rank higher in DraftKings points per game than Kittle, right? So he's priced equivalent to the wide receiver 25. He's actually been the wide receiver 16. That paints a pretty good picture of the value that you're getting at 5,400. if we get to Emmanuel Wilson in cash games, I'm definitely going to be playing George Kittle in cash. And even though I would expect at that point that he'd be very popular in tournaments, I would still play him at high exposure in tournaments. I think he's going to have a huge game. Kelsey, like Devin said, I think we could buy low, possibly on the entire Chiefs offense. I mean, I could forgive. Hello there. What do you got? I
You
could
want she
forgive
wanted to be on YouTube.
a.
There she is.
Oh, you're in trouble. So yeah, only 1.8 points from Kelsey last week. I don't think that people are gonna play him when they could go up to Kittle for 500 more, and that's pretty much that. I will say on Harold Bannon, if he's like, I don't know, what do you have him between 25 and 30%?
Yeah, 28 right now.
Yeah, I would fade that all day in tournaments because I think we've seen the best game of Harold Fannon's season, as good as he is, because we've seen the best game of Shador Sanders' season. I'm very confident in that. So I don't know that he's got the ceiling to come close to another 28 DraftKings points. He could definitely get you like the 3x that you need in cash games, but I think tight end in general is a very easy way to pivot from the crowd in tournaments because it's such a volatile position.
I think Tyler Warren at 4,700. If it's Philip Rivers, I mean, if it's Philip Rivers, he was sitting on his couch with his kids a week ago, and now stepping in, there might be some moments there where he's saying, "Oh my, what's going on here?" Tyler Warren could be the proxy for how Antonio Gates, way back in the day, double-digit targets maybe there for get the ball out of your hands pretty quickly to your big tight end. Colby Parkinson, a punt, 3,200 in that Lions-Rams game. He's kind of stepped forward as the lead tight end there. It's not going to be a lot of volume, but definitely a guy that could get into the end zone twice. I think that could be an interesting play there. I wouldn't be surprised if Ben Sinnott is a little bit popular. I don't know that I would go there. Mike Gesicki at 3,300, I think is interesting if T. Higgins is out of this game, even if T. Higgins is not. But if T. Higgins is out, I think Mike Gesicki, 3,300 is really interesting as a potential slot option there in the Bengals offense. Let's do our favorite stacks of the week. And Phil, what is your favorite stack of the week?
I've got Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, Brenton Strange. So kind of a weird way to stack Trevor Lawrence, who I think will be popular, but I don't think will be popular stacked with his running back and his tight end. No run back on the Jets. Sorry, John Mechie.
Don't play Jets.
Sorry, Devin.
CJ Stroud, Jaden Higgins, and Michael Wilson. Could probably fit Trey McBride in there too, just to be unique, and just completely stack this game.
I'll go with the Jackson Dart and Wan'Dale Robinson, and we'll throw Theo Johnson in there as well. You want to bring it back? Go ahead and bring back Terry McLaurin. So we'll do Dart, Robinson, Johnson, and Terry McLaurin. Discount plays of the week. Devin or Phil, what is your discount play of the week?
I've got Shimere DK, 4,300. On the other side of what should be a big score by the 49ers. The Titans are playing with some pride. Cam Ward is being forced to throw. And when that happens, DK comes up as his wide receiver one more often than not. So I think he's a viable punt at 4,300 and a pretty good run back for your San Francisco 49ers stacks.
Let's go. I'm going to go to Jaden Reed. I think 4,500. It's a fair price. I think he scores 2 touchdowns this week.
Mike Gesicki, 3,300 is going to be my discount play. I think there's potentially a lot of volume there for the Bengals pass offense going up against Baltimore. So that's all we got. So Devin, you want to give the people some great words, tell them to check out that DFS optimizer again, anything else that they need to know?
Yeah, check out the more importantly, send us your feedback once you try it out. Like that's what we're really interested in and what we're trying to do. So if you like it, great. Post, comment below. If you didn't get a chance to try it, that's fine too. But like interact with us, ask us questions below in the comments, and we'll try and jump in and answer anything you guys got.